Hello and welcome to Inside Sports. I'm Wes Decker. As always, glad to have you along this week, and it's a big one. Lots of playoff action to talk about. We've got soccer before the show is over, along with volleyball and cross country. All of that to cover before we're through. But we start with football, and that means Herald Mail insider Bob Parsiliti joins me for that. Bob, welcome back to the show.
Thanks for having me on.
We start with the 1A West semifinal between Allegheny and Boonesboro. And as we said last week, this is a bit of a sequel from the year before. And who would have thought that it would ever turn out to be another overtime game? Boonesboro would score first in the overtime, and then Allegheny would score last and win the football game. I mean, just for it to play out that way is very cruel for Boonesboro, and just something that I'm not sure that anybody could have seen coming.
I don't think even Clayton Anders thought it would be that tight of a game as far as score-wise, 14-14 at the end of regulation. He thought there would be some points on the board. And, if you go off of what had happened in the past weeks, I mean, I think I had written up that Allegheny had only allowed 80 points the entire year, and 34 of them came in the final game against Fort Hill. And Boonesboro gave up 83 points in the last 2 weeks. So, I mean, it was looking like there was going to be some movement in there. And Boonesboro really came out to play on defense. I mean, everybody expected Allegheny to, but Boonesboro really came out and played on defense in the beginning of the game, took control, and it started rolling their way.
And within the game itself, Lady Luck just couldn't really decide which side she wanted to ride with. Kind of changed her mind several times as that game unfolded. 3 times, the Warriors benefited from costly penalties that Allegheny committed, twice taking touchdowns off the board,
right,
and once also taking them out of position to put points on the board. They went from being at the Boonesboro 2-yard line all the way back to their own 46, and that was in the fourth quarter. So those are just a few examples of that, and the way that Boonesboro, as I said, benefited a little bit. But then on the Boonesboro side, 2 red zone interceptions when they seemingly had Allegheny's defense under the gun too. So just a couple of examples there.
Well, and then you throw in a couple of really big fumbles by Allegheny too. They fumbled early. Logan Milburn was trying to sweep and he fumbled early. And I think it set up the first touchdown for Boonesboro. Then he coughed it up again, and then they had a one in the end zone when in the fourth quarter when Luke Robinette was trying to dive over the top, got hit in the gut, and the ball just kind of coughed out and rolled into the end zone. And there was Keegan Bowles to fall on it. So that fourth quarter was really, moving end to end, and both teams had a chance to score to win it in regulation, and both made the mistakes, and then both got stuffed on play drives in the second and fourth quarter.
And that third quarter was just so dominated by Allegheny. Boonesboro only ran 6 plays in the entire third quarter, and that's where Allegheny scored all 14 of its points.
Well, Allegheny made an adjustment. I think in the first half they came out and basically said, this is the way we play football in Allegheny, take us down. And Boonesboro did. They stopped them. I mean, and it almost had a sense there that Allegheny, which got deferred to the second half on the kickoff, was just playing to get to halftime to go talk about this thing. I mean, because things weren't working right. Everything they were trying wasn't working. Figured they'd go back and talk about something. And Aaron Leiter went with me from the paper to work the game with me, and I says, Allegheny's going to do something, and they're going to have to score immediately to start the second half. Well, I think the main thing that Allegheny did was they made it tighter. I think they moved their running backs up about a step or so, and they were doing a lot of quick hit handoffs where it wasn't where the quarterback turns around and lopes back and hands it off. He just turned and they were there and they were running. And they found a lot of quick holes.
And we talked about the luck angle in this to some degree. Allegheny on the 4th play from scrimmage in the game runs for a touchdown, which could have changed the entire complexion of the game had it not been called back by the penalty that I mentioned earlier. Well, to start the third quarter, Allegheny fumbles the football. Keegan Bowles causes a fumble, but Allegheny recovers it, ultimately goes down and scores. Again, that could have changed the complexion of the entire second half, and maybe they don't dominate the third quarter the way they do. But right before halftime, kind of a freak play where Ben Bergen, who had already made a big third down tackle for Boonesboro when Allegheny was in Boonesboro territory in the second quarter, then comes up with a big reception out of punt formation to set up Boonesboro's first touchdown, a 29-yard reception. He just happens to be their kicker, gets hurt playing defense. Isaiah Elzy already out with an injury in the defensive backfield, and now Bergen's lost for the rest of the game. Didn't know quite how big an injury that would be, potentially coming down to overtime, not being able then to go for one and kick an extra point to put Boonesboro up by 7. But that was a big subtraction offensively, defensively, and then ultimately in the kicking game.
And it was kind of an odd play because it was a play toward the end zone. And
halfback option pass.
And he goes back, and the pass goes to the end zone to Scott Rhodes, which is Allegheny's big receiver. Steven Smothers is back there too. Smothers cuts it off. There's a bit of jostling. He goes up and gets it. He comes down and lands out of bounds with the interception, or actually had stepped out of bounds and didn't establish himself. Right. And then all of a sudden, after you got all this stuff going around, and then there's Bergen laying there on the side, and couldn't tell what it was at first. But then when he came out in the second half, he was so taped up, it looked like he was walking with a club instead of a left foot or a right foot.
Yeah, that ankle injury, obviously awfully severe, keeping him out for the rest of the game. And Allegheny's tying points, that drive that they put together, 11 plays, they go all the way down the field. But then, again, a little bit of luck, I guess, comes into play. It's a fourth down play that they score on. And they were actually pretty good on fourth downs in the game.
Well, that was a 28-yard kind of a hook pattern to the right side, and it was coming off of a timeout. And they, according to Clayton, Coach Anders, they didn't line up correctly. He says a lot of times when Boonesboro had trouble with defense, they didn't line up exactly the way they were supposed to. And they got outnumbered on one side, and when they got outnumbered, that resulted in the touchdown.
Yeah, Allegheny went to the right place on the field, obviously, to offset the fact that Boonesboro didn't set up properly. And in the end, Boonesboro scores the touchdown in overtime to take a 20-14 lead. They tried the two-point conversion. Keegan Bowles' pass batted down almost as soon as it comes out of his hand, had no chance of being complete, and Allegheny scores on the first play, kicks the extra point, and wins the game 21-20. So Boonesboro now 0-5 all time against Allegheny, but when they were 0-3, they had never been closer than 30 points. I don't know what's worse, though. 2 years in a row, losing in overtime, once by 3, now by 1. There are no moral victories in the playoffs.
Well, Clayton Anders said that this one's not any easier, but the idea that they actually scored a touchdown makes it a little bit better. But, in their eyes, the worst thing that happened to them was the coin flip, because they rather play defense first to see what they had to do instead of having, showing their cards to Allegheny. So the bad thing was it took them only Allegheny did one play to score that touchdown, and, then it's Wheel of Fortune.
Yeah, 2 years in a row, the same scenario sets up. Again, Allegheny getting the ball second in the overtime and scoring to win it. Bob, thank you very much. Look forward to seeing you on the awards show next week.
All right.
I'm back right after this. Andy Mason is here, and we'll talk some cross-country state champions in just a moment.
Champions are not merely born, they're forged in the crucible that is flag football. With equal parts turf, pigskin, and heart. That's why Buffalo Wild Wings donates to boys and girls clubs across the country, to not only help thousands of kids learn about teamwork on and off the field, but to help them fulfill their destiny. To shred defensive lines, terrorize the secondary, and emerge bonded as true champions.
At Hagerstown Ford, we charge less, period. We're the largest Ford store in the tri-state area. Number one for only one reason. We charge less, period. Hagerstown Ford delivers. We'll bring your new ride to you and do the whole deal sitting at your kitchen table. Easy peasy. Get more for your trade, easy on-the-spot financing, and the lowest prices on the East Coast guaranteed. And if we can't beat their deal, we'll buy that car for you. Hagerstown Ford, we charge less, period.
Welcome back to Inside Sports. We continue now with cross country, fresh off the state championships at Hereford this past Saturday. And joining me now, Herald Mail sports editor Andy Mason. Andy, welcome back to the show.
Nice to be back, Wes.
Well, I'll tell you, it was quite a show on Saturday at Hereford. First off, the Boonesboro girls go out and they defend their title, and I think it was an impressive performance just overall by them in terms of the entire group.
Oh, yeah. I mean, they dominated. They scored 37 points, which I think out of the 8 races that day, boys and girls, was the lowest. I'm pretty sure that was the lowest team winning point total. They put 4 in the top 9, 5 in the top 16. Medals go to the top 25. They got 6 of those. So they took they just dominated.
And as far as Boonesboro is concerned, obviously we had talked about Cameron Harper last week with the chance to win that state title. Came up just a little bit short, although she led for a big part of that race, especially early on.
Yeah, I predicted that she would win. I think she was second behind the Patterson Mill girl at the mile. Then the Patterson Mill girl dropped off, and Cameron led most of the second mile. And then this girl from Northern Garrett, Anna Roten, just seemingly came out of nowhere and took the title, ran probably the race of her life. She was just 5th. Harper won the West Region race pretty comfortably, and the girl from Northern Garrett was 5th. So she, had the race of her life. Now, I talked to the Northern Garrett coach, Jaron Hawkins, and, he said he wasn't surprised. He knew this girl had it in her. It wasn't expected, but he wasn't stunned by her performance. I think he maybe felt she was maybe underachieving up till that point. But she, clearly likes the hills, and Hereford has a lot of them.
Yeah, and what was surprising to me was just the margin of victory, the way that she kind of put Cameron away
I think
and
it was
went on to the win.
Like 28 seconds.
Yeah.
She took the lead with a mile to go and put 28 seconds on everyone.
It reminded me a little bit of Haley Wright a couple of years ago against Haley Jackson, where she led, and we thought that she would be the one who would emerge with the victory. Same sort of deal in the end, but again, Cameron will be back next year.
Yeah. Yep, she will. In fact, I think just about all those Boonesboro girls are coming back. They're going to be real good again. Boonesboro staying in 1A, for at least 2 more school years, and they're going to be the team to beat.
And how about Maggie Luzier's day?
Oh yeah, I mean here's a girl, junior. She was last year. She was on the team, and I think she was like their number 14 runner. She didn't get the states. This year, she finished 5th in the state. She's their number 2 runner. Just another, like the Northern Garrett girl who won, she had probably the best race of her life. Just an incredible performance. Stepped up when it mattered most.
Yeah, so a terrific day for Boonesboro.
And her sister was right behind her.
Yeah.
McKenna, she was 7th.
Right.
So they went. The Lugier sisters were 5th and 7th, the number 2 and 3 runners for Boonesboro.
And the Smithsburg girls didn't have the day that they probably would have liked to have had overall, but certainly another good placing at states.
Yeah, they got 3rd. I'm sure they wanted top 2.
Yeah.
I'm sure they were 2nd last year, 1st the year before. You get an award for being top 2, but Northern Garrett it was just like the region race: Boonesboro, Northern Garrett, Smithsburg. But yeah, they had a 3rd place is still great. Erica Lindsay led the way. She was 6th. I'm sure she wanted to be a little higher than that. She was contending for the lead for the first half of the race. And Mallory Mohawk was 11th. Those were their top 2 girls.
Over on the boys' side, it was all Will Merritt as we expected, but maybe Will Merritt even going beyond what we might have expected.
Oh man, so he defends his 1A title, but that's not enough for Will Merritt. He wants to be the best, and on Saturday he had the fastest time of all 4 boys races, coming from the smallest division, which is very rare.
And how does this quantify the growing legend of Will Merritt, if you will?
Oh well, it just keeps growing. I mean, he just keeps raising the bar and clearing it, and to be the fastest. He ran 15:54, an amazing time on that hilly course at Hereford. And no one else of the 3 bigger classifications broke 16 minutes. I mean, and Merritt also had, out of all 4 boys races, the biggest margin of victory. And that says something too. All 3 of those other races, everyone's being pushed to the very end. Well, it's not like Merritt wasn't unpushed, but he had a pretty comfortable lead. I think he won by 25 seconds. And everyone, the other winners were all just by a few seconds. So he had a big win, a fast time.
And he's one of those guys, that's what he was striving for. As you said, it wasn't enough just to win that race. He's just that much of a competitor.
Yeah. I mean, last year he just won the win. I'm pretty sure, everyone wants to be fast, but he ran 16:50. This year he takes almost a minute off that time. And, there's the stage. Everyone in the state's there, and you can really show who you are. And he showed, on that day he was the best.
And how about the Smithsburg boys finishing ahead of Boonesboro? I know Boonesboro's team wasn't necessarily at full strength, but how big was that for the Leopards?
Oh, it's huge. Jordan Marquise had a huge, or Kirchhoff had a huge day. He was 9th. Marquise was another medal winner. They both had solid races behind Merritt. It's huge. They finished behind Boonesboro all year. Boonesboro went in thinking they could win this thing again. They were defending state champs, and they finished 4th. Smithsburg edges them, gets 3rd. This is after Smithsburg finished 2nd to them at counties, at regions. On the biggest day, they beat them. But now Southern, Bohemia Manor and Southern Garrett, they stole the show. They both looked really good. And I looked at their lineups. Out of the 10 scores for both those teams combined, Bohemia Manor and Southern Garrett, only one of them is a senior.
Wow.
I think it was like Bohemia Manor's number 4 runner is a senior, and the other 9 guys from both scoring squads are coming back.
Yeah, it was kind of a scary sight because you saw Will Merritt first, and then the next thing you looked at was nothing but red and black coming after that.
Yeah.
So, yeah, it's going to be a tall task coming back next year for anybody to unseat Bohemia
And
Manor.
Boonesboro, I don't think Becky Walter, the Boonesboro coach, had time to crunch all the numbers yet, but real quickly, looking at the race, right after the race, she said, we ran better than we did last year. We were faster than last year. It was a much more competitive race.
That tells you a lot about this year, no question about that. Well, Andy, thank you very much. Look forward to seeing you back for the awards show. I'm back right after this, joined by Kevin Dunleavy. We'll talk soccer in just a moment.
When it comes to hearing loss, who will be taking care of you? Audiologist Dr. Karen Hamilton is Hagerstown's hearing doctor, working to improve the quality of life for those with hearing loss. At Audiology Services, Dr. Hamilton focuses on evaluation and diagnosis to provide solutions for treating hearing loss. Using the latest technology, she programs hearing aids to meet your unique needs and ensures they fit properly and comfortably. Audiology Services participates with most insurance companies and will check benefits and file claims on your behalf. Dr. Hamilton and her team also serve the community through Hagerstown Hearing, which focuses on providing crystal clear sound in places such as theaters, churches, offices, and homes. Hagerstown Hearing installs looping systems that allows those with hearing loss to enjoy speech clarity and noise reduction, providing an experience like never before. To learn more about Audiology Services and Hagerstown Hearing, call 301-790-3300. Audiology Services and Hagerstown Hearing, providing crystal clear sound.
Welcome back to Inside Sports. We continue now with more playoff action, and it was 1A state semifinal soccer playoff action. As a matter of fact, on Saturday, Kevin Dunleavy was there. Kevin, welcome back to the show.
Thank you, Wes.
The Smithsburg Leopards, a team that I don't think many gave a chance to get this far this season because it's such a young team. Now, conversely, on the other side, you have a 3-time defending champion at Sparrows Point, very young team too, but they've been there, done this, and as those two matched up, you had to think that the first goal was going to be ultra important in this game, which Sparrows Point got.
Yeah, and it was just an accumulation of them dominating possession and really just dominating early in the game. They got it in the 5th minute, but Sparrows Point's domination continued for about 20 minutes in that first half, and it was clear that they had the better athletes. They're a machine. They only had 3 starters back from last year's team that won its 3rd straight state championship, but they just reloaded with tremendous athletes. I don't know how they draw girls that are this elite, but they've got a player who's a sophomore who is already committed to West Virginia. They've got 4 freshman starters who look like they look like players that would have fit in with last year's team in the previous year. So, they're like Smithsburg is in volleyball in the 1A. I mean, they're that dominant. And Smithsburg did well to hang with them.
Yeah, I thought Smithsburg was thin on seniors with just 5, but Sparrows Point with only 3. And they get that early goal, have a 1-0 lead, and then eventually stretch it to 2-0. But one of the seniors for Smithsburg, Brianna Rao, really did a great job of minimizing the damage and keeping it at just 2-0.
Yeah, well, it was just 1-0 actually until deep into the second half. She made a lot of saves, came off her timing is really amazing when she has a real good sense of when to come off the goal line and disrupt things and end possible chances. And it was kind of a showcase for her to show how good a goalie that she is. And then Smithsburg really kind of adjusted, and they found a way to compete with that team. And they had for parts of late in the first half and early in the second half, they gave reason for Sparrows Point to be worried that the game might be tied up because Smithsburg had some good chances. The other goalie had to make 8 saves. So it wasn't like it was a dominant effort. I mean, it was by Sparrows Point. It was Smithsburg using their smarts and finding out how to play with that team.
It's crazy. You get a North Region champion in Sparrows Point, a West Region champion in Smithsburg, yet there's so much familiarity between these two schools in the soccer playoffs.
Yeah, they've met 2 of the last 3 years, and both in the state championship game. This year they've rearranged the regions so that they met in the semifinals. But those last 2 games, last 2 state championship times that they met, were 1 goal difference, and Smithsburg didn't get it. And they were on equal footing the last 2 years with them that they played them. The difference this time was Smithsburg just doesn't have the athletes they've had in the past, but boy, they play so smart, they figure stuff out.
Well, this Leopards team is going to have an awful lot coming back next year. And I think another point needs to be made here. When you talk about 1A girls soccer, it's so messed up from the standpoint of schools not being in the 1A classification. And the case in point, Smithsburg beats Williamsport, who is actually a 2A school, to win the section title. They beat Mountain Ridge, who's a 2A school, to win the region title. And then they go up against Sparrows Point, who's a 2A school, in the 1A state semifinals. So Smithsburg kind of has a little bit of a gripe here that, hey, why aren't we playing 1A schools for a 1A title? Yeah, and I really think Maryland's got too many divisions to start with. I mean, 3 divisions would make so much more sense. It's, they've got to backload move some 2A teams to the 1A just to make the 1A a serious competition. Otherwise, you'd have a very, a field that's really light. So, Smithsburg's got to feel bad when when you're losing to 2A schools, but right now there's no other way around it because there's too few 1A teams that have soccer programs, and that's why they have to, juggle it around. Well, I know Coach Delamea was supremely confident going into the postseason. I saw him right before that, and he kind of smiled like a Cheshire cat because he knew that they had played a very tough schedule during the regular season that prepared them for this. And then to get upset victories, they were only the number 3 seed in their section. So to get to where they got, win 10 of their final 12 games, including 6 of their last 7, wind up 12-6, quite a feather in the cap for Smithsburg this year.
Oh yeah, and considering the talent of a Williamsport, I think quite a bit more talent than Smithsburg had, and veterans. But Smithsburg, they play so smart and they play in such a controlled defensive posture that they can frustrate teams. And Williamsport, they only need to make 4 saves to beat Williamsport. I mean, what does that tell you about a team that was just rolling everybody before the playoffs? Yeah,
congratulations to Smithsburg on a great season. Nevertheless, coming up just a little bit short there, but battling against Sparrows Point. Kevin, thanks so much for being here.
Sure thing, Wes, thanks.
I'll be back right after this. Catch up on what's happening in volleyball as the quest for state titles continue there in just a moment.
Tony's Pizza in Williamsport has had the same simple philosophy since 1985. Start with simple products. Sauce from the best Italian tomatoes. The best cheese and dough made fresh every day. Then mix those with a great atmosphere, and you'll have the best dining experience you can find. Tony's is known for their pasta dishes, subs, pizzas, and specialty items like their Nutella Dots and the famous Crazy Tony. Simply put, they want to give the best food they can give to their customers. So stop in today to Tony's Pizza in Williamsport.
Welcome back to Inside Sports. In volleyball, we pick up where we left off last week with 4 Washington County schools endeavoring to cap their respective seasons with a state crown. Although a relatively usual one, Williamsport might have been considered one of the least likely suspects after an up-and-down season. But with some good fortune and some even better play, the Wildcats were in a position to capture the 2A West Section 1 title last Wednesday in Frostburg. After dropping the first set to top-seeded Mountain Ridge, Williamsport had to find the fight that had lifted it to 7 wins in its last 8 matches coming in, and find it the Cats did. Kiara Lewis put up a monster night as Williamsport roared back to take the next 3 sets, including a thrilling 27-25 triumph in the third, before gutting out the 25-22 clincher in the fourth and decisive game to advance to Friday's region final, which they were pleasantly surprised to learn was in their own gym. Not only that, Williamsport drew a familiar opponent in Section 2's 5th seed, the Century Knights, a team the Cats had swept 15 days earlier. After Century posted upsets of Oakland Mills, top-seeded Liberty, and second-seeded Marriott's Ridge to earn the return trip to Williamsport, the Wildcats were determined not to take the Knights lightly. And Williamsport played that way, never really letting Century get a foothold, even though all three sets were fairly close, 25-21, 25-20, and 25-21. The Cats never trailed by more than 1 point, and that was on just 3 occasions in set 2. With their 4th straight victory, the 2A West Region champions carry plenty of momentum into Thursday's state semifinal at the University of Maryland against East Region representative Calvert. The winner will then face the winner of the other semi between defending state champion Rising Sun and Hereford on Saturday. Last Wednesday, the North Hagerstown Hubs took one step closer to returning to Ritchie Coliseum for the first time since their state title 2 years ago. Coach Megan Crawford's girls did it by avenging a regular season setback to top-seeded Linganore in straight sets to claim the 3A West Section 2 title and secure a berth in the region championship match for the 6th consecutive year. Coach Crawford knew her team would have to be extra mentally tough going into the hostile environment of the defending region champ Damascus, who had beaten North there last year, and she had to be concerned about the Hubs' recent inability to effectively close out sets. North struggled to put South away in sets 2 and 3 of their section semifinal after holding 24-12 and 23-11 advantages in those games respectively. North finally finished them off 25-16 and 25-19. Then against Linganore, the Hubs were up 24-15 in the first before scrambling to prevail 25-19 and were ahead 21-5 in the third before allowing the Lancers to score 10 of the final 14 points before ending it. A little bit of foreshadowing? Perhaps. Fortunately or unfortunately for the Hubs, that scenario wasn't an issue in set 1 because they never came close to leading. North shook off the one-sided 25-12 first set loss and battled to a 17-all tie in the second before evening the match by winning Game 2, 25-19. But in the third and the fourth, the Damascus ceiling literally determined critical points for and against both teams, and ultimately the Hubs' lack of closeout ability resurfaced. Damascus overcame 18-13, 21-18, and 24-21 deficits to pull out a pivotal set 3, 30-28, and then Damascus rallied out of a 19-16 hole in the fourth to outlast and oust North 25-23. The Hubs season ends with a record of 12-5. Now, with the 1A West Section 2 title up for grabs last Wednesday, another county schools season was on the line. The top-seeded Smithsburg Leopards were bound and determined it wouldn't be theirs. In their final home match of the season opposite second-seeded Clear Spring, Smithsburg set the tone right out of the blocks and rolled to a sweep that brought the curtain down on a fine 11-5 year for the Blazers. The Leopards moved on to Saturday and a clash in Cumberland versus undefeated Fort Hill. In Smithsburg's 8th straight 1A West region final face-off with the Sentinels, the result was the same as 7 of the previous matchups, a Leopard victory. So it was on to the venue on the same street that is home to Six Star Dry Cleaners and the Maryland Bartending School, the historic Ritchie Coliseum, which while historically has been very good to Coach Rachel Brashear's Smithsburg teams, has conversely been very bad for their opponents, who in this case was Seed School out of Baltimore. And the Sabres had no idea what blitzkrieg of a fate awaited them until it was too late. And that started with the very first point of the match. And Seed was no match for the two-time reigning and defending state champions, who didn't allow a single service point during the 25-3, 25-5, 25-4 blowout that concluded with Smithsburg recording 11 aces in the third set alone, all while finding playing time for all 15 players on the roster. The Leopards will face Perryville on Saturday for the state title, a team they've defeated 4 times in 4 previous encounters, including last year's state semis. Smithsburg enters a perfect 13-0 in championship matches since 2009 without losing a single solitary set. That's 39 the Leopards have won without losing one. Additionally, with a victory Saturday evening, Smithsburg's Brashear can establish a new county record for most state championships won by a head coach. It would be her 7th and the Leopards' 7th in the last 8 years. Best of luck to both Smithsburg and Williamsport at the University of Maryland this week. Next week, I'll show and tell you how they fared, and as alluded to throughout, it's the Fall Awards Show. Until then, thanks for watching this time, and I'll see you next time on The Inside.